So, this is such a weird rock movie. It's so different from other rock movies because mostly, you'd set up 5 cameras and then you'd capture a concert and then maybe you'd have like a couple of different, people would chime in from the band, have interviews. But this is so different. This is almost like you're trying to like build this cosmos around the band. Is that what's going on here?
That's a great way of describing it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it was like that was the thing that appealed to me about the band in the first place. I mean, it was like. I tell the story in this book, More Fun in the New World, that just came out.
Available in the lobby.
Available in the lobby. John orchestrated that. I was. I'll make it short, but I was in Paris, which is a great place to be. But I was in an empty apartment for a month writing a screenplay, and there were only 2 records in the apartment, and one was Bob Dylan's "Blood on the Tracks," and the other one was "Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols." And so those were kind of drilled into my brain, and I got this delirium about, wouldn't it be amazing if there was a band that combined the qualities of those 2 artists? And then literally the first week I got back to LA, I met Elizabeth, and I was staying up from the Whiskey A Go-Go, about half a block up, and I saw this marquee that said Screamers X, and it was so mysterious and intriguing that I went in and saw X. And it was that band. It was that fusion band, So there was everything about them. I mean, just the music, their personalities, their worldview. It just really, amazed both of us. And so it just seemed like, as you say, I mean, it was the thing to do was to do something as unorthodox and also there was nobody telling us what to do. So it was like, I had final cuts. So I could do whatever the fuck I wanted to. So,
yeah.
And also, I'll say one other quick thing is that. It took us 5 years to make this film, like shooting a little bit, cutting things together, trying to raise some money, and not being very successful at it. And then we'd have to keep going with the band to do more things and all that. And so every sequence in the film took on a different life because we'd be bored. You want to do something new, and different. So it became this hybrid, strange monster.
It's amazing. John, do you really write songs on bass? That's amazing.
All the early X songs were written on bass. Except for maybe some on the 4th record. But it gave Billy some latitude to figure out how he wanted to phrase it and voice the chords and things. But I'd also give Bill and Elizabeth and the whole filmmaking crew credit because they wanted to capture not just the band, but also the time. And that's kind of what we try to do in the books. And without context, it's just vanity kind of project. And I had to lean over to Bill and say, God, look at that skyline in Los Angeles. Because all it was like City Hall and the library, like when it was the UT Tower and the Capitol here. And it was like, what the fuck? Where did that city go? It's like, it's disappeared. But anyway.
Right.
So looking at the movie now, John, do you look at it and think, it's all in there. It's all there. You could kind of reconstruct the times from this film.
Yeah, and I also think like, God, we looked good back then. But I also, I've said this before, is I give Bill and the production a lot of credit for getting good performances and good sound quality and good shots because you're going to spend an hour and a half or whatever about this time or this band or whatever, and they have to deliver. Because there's some times where it's like, oh, this is the greatest thing, it's the greatest thing, and then you see it and it's like, it's not really the greatest thing because the quality is not good, and so if it wasn't for the performance stuff, I think, and it was smart that it was peppered in, so.
Yeah, and one other thing about that is that, I mean, the goal of the film was to try to not do the typical thing, which always kind of bothered me, where it turns you into this passive fan, where you're just sort of sitting back and admiring something, but this film requires you to participate with it, and to put it together yourself. And there's a lot of meaning here. If you see it 3 or 4 times, things will come out that you didn't. I mean, I've seen it 100 times, and I'm still catching things. So, but it's the idea is that it's an active experience as an audience, to participate in. It's sort of the experience that we had first experiencing the music.
I just wanted to say that I just think they're the best band.
Yes. Yeah, they really are.
Yes.
I thank you.
It's just it's magic the way it all comes together, the way the sound comes together. It just all works. It's a really incredible. It's like just a mystery of how this ever happens, that you guys met each other and you was the perfect sound. And just just Exene thrown in just is like the perfect way, like, for the tonality to go a little crazy on top of all of that.
Yeah.
It's really something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I don't know if it's magic, but it was good and it is good, and we're all grateful that we're still doing it, and you guys want to come see it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
I also want to ask some questions, I bet. I wonder who in our audience has some great questions for our distinguished guests. Anybody? I see a hand right over here. Yeah.
Well, first I want to say congratulations on making one of the best rock movies ever.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And John, I wanted to say a lot of people in this audience are fans of the Big Boys, including myself, and wondering if you could talk about how you got to know them and how your friendship with them and this scene started, and maybe with other scenes around the country.
Oh, that sounds like a whole book, but I honestly don't remember. I just know that we came here and we had heard of them in LA through word of mouth, or maybe somebody sent a single or a cassette tape or something like that. I remember distinctly playing at Numbers in Houston and Club Foot here, and I can't remember whether Biscuit had a string of Christmas lights wrapped around him or not, but it could have been, and we just loved their music, and it was encouraging because we sometimes we felt like we were just little pockets, and there wasn't much else in other states and other cities. But then we came out here, and there was the Dicks, and what was the other band? Yeah, I can't remember, but anyway, it's just and it was sad when Biscuit passed away, but he got to do a lot of stuff, and he was really well respected as an artist, and you kind of wanted that. And Swine King was fun and kind of outside, and he loved that stuff. And yeah, I mean, I hope that somebody picks up their pen and gets the other people to write about the Texas scene, the Austin scene in Texas, and there was a big thing and people going on in Houston and everything like that. So
Yeah. Write a book, sir.
yeah.
Over here.
I know this is brought up, but it's hard to believe that was Exene's first music experience.
Yeah.
Did you have any experience at all before?
Not being in bands. She's a natural songwriter, and just she and I working together and being together 24/7. We just figured it out. Yeah.
Amazing.
We were very fortunate. I mean, it's I think fate, that we all happened to be there at the same time, and that these guys were here to document it. And sometimes it just happens too quickly, and people can't capture it. Luckily, we stuck around for 5 years. These guys, we kept developing the plot by life continuing. It's like that 7 and 7 and 14 and 21, whatever that movie is about.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say we were really lucky because just 5 years of just going to shows and watching movies. That's all we did for 5 years, and making the movie. So
Simpler
we learned.
time.
If it wasn't, X was like our example. So when we didn't know, we never made a movie before ourselves. So when we would stop, we wouldn't know what to do. We didn't know. We ran out of money. We lost our editors, and then we just said, well, what would X do? And that was like our question every time. And so you guys
we
were
did it ourselves.
amazing examples. Yeah. So thank
Yeah, we adopted the Max Sennett School of Filmmaking, which is the Max Sennett created the Keystone Cops, and so there would be a fire, a building burning down the street, and so they'd go out and shoot, and then they'd write a plot around it.
Right.
So that was kind of our life for 5 years. We were kind of growing up with X while they were making music, and we were experiencing everything that was going on in the world, which is some of that is in the movie.
So
And so the story emerged. You learn to pay attention, I guess, after a while, and that's the big thing.
And carry a 16-millimeter camera in your
right,
trunk.
everywhere.
In our trunk.
My friend back here, Will, said, so what's with the, how did you get that house on the trailer? So, Bill?
Well,
How'd you get the house
that
on
was
the
our apartment. No. Actually, the true story, we'll tell the short version, which is that we lived vampire hours basically, and we were up out all night and like slept all day basically. And so Liz and I were out at a Fat Burger in L.A., which is a great.
And
Oh, you know,
Westwood.
yes, in Westwood, having a extremely delicious but really unhealthy meal at 2 in the morning, whatever it was, and so we're sitting there, and this house drives by, and we're going like, oh, what? So I was really exhausted, and I had to go to bed, but we always had a camera handy, and so Liz was more intrepid, and she charmed her way onto the.
So I followed him. I
Go
followed
ahead.
him down the street, and the rest is history.
Yeah, so she shot it on her 8mm camera, and we looked at the footage a few days later, and
That was how I got to work on the movie.
well, plus
I-
she had to play Pauline. You know,
Of course, of course.
But I had to do a lot of other
You had
stuff.
to do a lot of
before
stunts, like climbing
Yeah.
onto moving
Yeah.
moving apartment buildings and things
Right,
like
right.
that.
to prove that I could do it.
Right.
So.
But we spent 2 nights chasing that damn thing all over LA and shooting it.
That's
inside-
show business.
It's a show
Yeah.
business, the miracle of show business, and they stop at a light, so we jump on and shoot for a few blocks, and they stop at another light, we get off and shoot and drive ahead and shoot some more. So it was that sort of thing.
Wait a minute, you didn't make arrangements with the driver of the truck?
Well,
No,
not,
they
the,
were- they
not
were
the
get-
first time. Not the first
Okay.
time.
Well, but even the
then
second
the second
time, they knew we were doing it, but they weren't going to stop for us.
Uh,
It was like, it was, well, if we come to a red light, then you can get on or get off. Whatever
Yeah,
you wanna
sure.
do. It's like,
That's
And-
also
and-
that's
and-
very show business.
you know,
Very,
what-
very show business.
What happens in the house,
yeah.
stays in the house.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I saw a hand right over here. But now that question is over. It was about the house, I think. Yeah, right over here.
Yeah, so a lot of the great footage in this movie is not the band,
Uh-huh.
like the house movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And you had like the equivalent of like the Beatles and the band with Last Waltz in terms of individual characters, but you supplemented it with a whole bunch of footage that was not the band,
Right.
which I think is part of what makes this movie amazing.
Thank you.
thanks.
So where did that come from? You had to sift through
Oh my God.
we did.
a ton of footage to figure out not
Yeah.
only just for kicks, but also to make your point.
Well, yeah, I guess it's OCD is the explanation for it. But no, keep in mind, I mean, the World Wide Web did not exist at the time, so it's not like we could Google, footage of eggs on an assembly line. It was like literally, there were a couple of little tiny, I mean, it's great for, people who preserve film. I mean, there was a couple little houses that had all these weird 16mm, industrial films from the 40s and whatever, and it literally just looking at it, oh, that title looks interesting, that might be applicable, and looking at it and going through all this footage and going, oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Well, like the first time when we first started making the first thing they did was white girl footage, which
White
was
girl, yeah.
amazing, which we showed on our kitchen. And our neighbors were going, yeah, right, you're going to make a movie? And we're like, sure, it's like this big on our kitchen wall. And it was really fun. But then we took the first thing, we watched stuff on television. We go, we want that piece of footage. We want that. And I'd go and call and get that footage. And that's how we got a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, like the lies, projecting out of the radio towers,
That was
actually
our
from a
first
Frank.
piece.
It was like a Frank Capra thing, and I think I had the flu, and I was at home and saw that on TV and went, oh
No.
shit.
Part of it.
And
me.
that's
I-
isn't
Oh, you
that,
saw it. I'm sorry.
isn't that part of isn't that part
That was
of
the first one.
Meet John Doe?
John Doe, meet John Doe.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
but
we used
Meet
Meet John Doe as
is
well,
different,
but we
yeah.
also
The
Why
lies
We
thing?
Why We Fight series that Frank
Okay.
Capra directed. So,
Right.
Right.
Oh, the propaganda, the lies.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
propaganda
Yeah.
stuff with the lies.
But there's at the end where there's so many fast cuts. That's I mean the Los Angeles at that point had 24-hour television, but there were only 4 or 5 channels. So the big 3, and then there were 2 like independent channels.
Right.
But they would do this thing. There was one thing that said movies till dawn, and they would just so you would be subject to whatever the programmer would put on for. But you would see a lot of weird ass stuff because it was like, okay, let's do because like what not as strange but similar in that there's a as AFS. It's like. That's cool. Let's do that. That's cool too. Let's
Yeah.
do that. And so you would see all these B movies because they didn't have to rent them, or nobody would know, and nobody gave a shit, and so, for people that were just staying up all night, that would be in the background, and then maybe
Right.
you'd see something that was interesting.
And what Bill would do, I'll just say,
Oh, yeah.
is we had a single apartment at the time, and the television in the room, and Bill would sit up and have his camera on the television and stop motion, because in those days that's what you had to do. So he'd just stop motion that's what that ending part where all the
Yeah, in
footage
the
is
end
going
of-
by really fast. He's sitting there real time all night,
Right.
clicking, shots of the television. So that's how that
That's
came
how
about.
crazy I was.
Yeah.
But to get to the heart of the question about all that stuff, in most movies, that would be kind of interstitial. Like you might have a little transition that would have like a little bit like that, but in here it's like the interstitial goes nuts. But then all the stuff with the band is just gold. So you never get bored with the band. Like
Right.
when you watch The Last Waltz, like no offense, but you start going like, this band's kind of boring, not so much the music, but like the musicians. You
Right.
never get that in this.
Oh, thank you.
In this, like you're always like,
Well-
you always want to hear more.
We were big fans of Eisenstein, and he had this great quote, which says, your motto should be the ruthless elimination of the inessential.
Yeah.
So that was like, does this really matter? No, it goes out. Yeah, thank you. So,
Of course, there was X in between.
but also we had gold to work with, so to
Yeah,
start with, so
absolutely,
that helped.
absolutely. So let's take maybe one or two more questions from the audience. I see a hand right over here.
The story about the X from the XX building, where is that X now?
I have it. I still have it. Yeah, it was in Brooklyn, and it was a city block that said, "X-Lax, the home of the chocolate laxative." Being a fan of John Waters, I couldn't pass it up, and so
Right.
yeah, it was long. Yeah, I still have it.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I see a hand back here.
I did, yeah, the first time.
Yeah, well, and we did when we shot it was a different house that we shot, but when we went back over 2 nights and they did this, they started in Westwood. They were tearing down the places in Westwood, and that's where we shot some of the Pauline wandering and the homeless in the rooms, which I want to say something about that in a second. But sorry.
No, I mean,
So did the house make a left turn? Where did the house?
You get points for knowing your Los Angeles
That was a
geography.
good geography lesson there. Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
I think maybe we've got the house covered.
Yeah.
Maybe we move on from the house at this point. I see a hand right over here.
Yeah, in the credits, I noticed a special thanks to Cal Worthington.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I guess I didn't catch it. Like, was it one of his spots or something? Because you were talking
Yeah.
about like late at night.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
ads.
Oh yeah.
he
Was
held
it
the
just
X.
interspersed in there and I missed it?
He had the X.
It was in the beginning, and then he kind of showed up again in the end, but in the montage. But we got it because Liz called him,
Yeah.
and he was great. He said, "Well, we wanted," because he had this one we'd seen, staying up late. We'd seen this one ad where he was going like this. Well, spot whatever he said, and Liz calls him up, and she got Cal. And he said, "I don't know what you want this for, but fine, whatever."
Can you explain who this is?
Oh, Cal Worthington was a famous car dealer in Southern California, and he was a TV personality. And he had his dog Spot, he called it, but it'd always be an elephant or a tiger or whatever, never a dog.
Fly upside down and buy
He,
plane or something.
he said, "I'll eat a bug to sell you a car." That was kind of
He was quite a celebrity in L.A. at the time.
he was.
If you need a go see car, go see Cal. If you want to buy a car, go see Cal.
That's it. Let's sing the Cal song.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They're a lot like what's happening in the movie next door. We're capturing that time across commercials.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the Once Upon a Time in White America.
Oh.
I just saw that. I didn't make that up. I saw it on Instagram. I thought it was very, very witty.
I see a hand right over here.
John, I really enjoyed the audio version of your book. It was great hearing you tell the stories and all the other people that you had do it. So thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Wondering for the documentary, did that bring y'all a bunch of bigger audience at the time, or what was the effect once the film came?
It's hard to say. I mean, Bill, why don't you tell the story?
Which one?
Well, there were five copies
yeah,
of the
the five
of the
prints.
movie, and it would go to a city, like Philadelphia, and it would play there for a week, and then they would say, okay, cool, we're done, and then it would go to Atlanta, and it would be, you know, bouncing around. The only place that kept reordering or that it stayed, it was in Seattle, and it was released in '86.
86, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, and so it kept getting held over for like 2 months in Seattle, and then Bill met Kurt Cobain years later, and he said, "Oh, you did that movie? Yeah, we went to see that like all the time." And sure enough, you know, that's like right around the time that Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and Nirvana and all those guys were starting up their thing. So that's nice to hear. But I don't know. I mean, maybe a little bit, but you know, it wasn't like in a lot of movie theaters. It was just like here and there. So
Yeah.
It's hard for a lot of people to understand that at that time, like pre-internet, like you would try to find any little thing that you could about a band, and if there was a whole film about it, it was like that was the most information you could ever hope to learn about that band, because you would find like a little article here, there might be a fanzine article here, maybe Rolling Stone might devote like one tiny column to this band and a review occasionally, but you just couldn't find out all that stuff about your favorite bands.
early on, but I mean, by the time we were doing Wild Gift, the second record, you know, Under the Big Black Sun, getting signed to Elektra and stuff like that. I mean, Elektra sort of got shamed into signing us. They did. I mean, here was Slash Records. They had, you know, they hadn't sold very many records, but in L.A. we played a place called the Greek Theater, and it's like 6,000 or 7,000 people, and we sold it out, being on an independent record label. So Elektra's like, okay, fine, you know, then we'll do this. I don't get it, but whatever. So we did get a lot of press. We got a lot of nationwide press, you know, New York Times and LA Times, stuff like that. So it wasn't like we were underground. We wanted to have a career. So I mean, but the movie was kind of like a feather in our cap, you know, like we did this thing and it's good. So.
Were you cool with throwing multiple record company executives? Because Seymour Stein is the only one who looks like a cool guy among the record company executives.
Seymour Stein? No,
Yeah,
he's
Bob
not.
Biggs.
That was the
Bob
sorry
Biggs.
guy. Okay, all right.
Bob
I'll
Biggs
take
is
that
a
back.
Slash. Oh, I was just telling Bill the record company douchebags always deliver.
Yeah.
They're always so bad and so dumb and
Right.
It's
you know,
amazing
the
because
phone ringing in the back. Well, it just goes to show you what, you know, what hubris will, you know, give you. It'll give, you know, just give them enough rope and they'll, you know, be an idiot. So.
how's Point Blank doing now? By the way?
To the top.
I hope we never run into him in a dark alley.
Yeah, they look like rough guys.
What's that?
Why did you decide to come back to Austin?
Well, I've never lived here before. I've been coming here since, you know, 79 or 80. I just needed a change, and I got a lot of friends here, and I could buy a house here. So I'm part of the immigrant problem.
Yeah, all these California people.
From California.
Oh,
It's
God.
like, tough shit, sorry. But before we move on, though, I want to recommend Rockers. It's like a less
This
blank.
is what we're playing next. Yeah.
Yeah, if you feel like sticking around, thanks for coming and all that stuff. And also, I'm just curious, how many people have seen this movie before? Wow,
Wow, that's pretty
cool.
good.
That's surprising.
It's all happening. Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
I want to thank Lars for
Oh,
inviting
Thank you,
us.
Lars, so
Thank you
much.
guys so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, John. And then tomorrow,
And Chrissy for supporting us too. Thank you,
Chrissy.
Chrissy.
so tonight we show Rockers. You'll introduce Rockers. This is a film that you chose of all the films made in the world. And then tomorrow, because we set out to kind of do this to show this movie, and then also to have you choose a movie that you love, to program a film, and then to show a film that you're in, which you also chose, which is Georgia, which plays tomorrow
Yes.
afternoon.
Yeah.
So that's one that a lot of people haven't
4:15.
seen, but is amazing.
yeah, it's a good movie. I don't have any like deep connection to Rockers, except I saw it when it came out, and it kind of blew my mind because it is like an immersive experience. And you know, like I say, it's like Les Blanc. You're there, and there's a plot, and it really doesn't matter because it's just so cool to watch, and there's great music, and so if you feel like sticking around, if not, we might be at the Long Play Lounge, which is just down the street, and after that. So
All right, sounds great. Thanks everybody for coming. Thank
thank
you
you
all.
for coming. Thanks, Lars.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Chrissy Tigerstrom.
Thank you.